When I learned that Joan had been strangled and the fact that she had been stalked, I told the police who I thought it was. And the person I thought it was Tony Deirdre.
It's clear that there is very strong evidence to suggest that he was the prime suspect for this murder.
Everybody knows it's him. He should confess.
The fact that the police failed to do what I think they should have done, evidentially, leads one to question their judgment at that time.
I'm fighting against a system that has said, no, we cannot help you. Even in view of the fact that we know who did this, committed this crime, we cannot help you. And that to me is totally unacceptable.
On Boxing Day 1994, Dr. Joan Francisco was found strangled in her basement flat in North London. What follows chronicles an extraordinary 5-year campaign by Joan's family to put her killer behind bars.
We celebrated Christmas together. She lit the candles on the table. She poured out the brandy over the pudding and then she lit it. After dinner, pulled out crackers. She was reading out the jokes. She watched television. And then she left here about 8 p.m. We hugged, smiling as usual. Waved her goodbye. It was the last time I saw her alive.
The phone rang. It was my mother. This was on Boxing Day. She sounded like a totally different person. She said, I've got some bad news for you. She said, Joan's dead.
Joan's parents, Alfred, a teacher, and Venus, a nurse, emigrated from the Caribbean to London in the 1950s. Proud of their 3 daughters, they had high expectations for their future. Margaret and Celia both became lawyers in America, and Joan, the youngest, qualified as a doctor in 1992.
As the younger sister, we were always, watching out for Joan. She had this sense of just seeing the good in everybody and not seeing people's negative traits. Sometimes we point things out to her, don't be so quick to jump into certain types of friendships with people. And so, I was naturally protective over her, and she would confide in me, a lot, so I would always give her my sisterly advice.
I miss the brightness she brought to my life. She was so bubbly and happy and full of excitement about everything.
Joan was an accomplished pianist, and she obtained her grade 8. I used to ask her to play me my favorite pieces, which were Fernalise. I like a Moonlight Sonata. She last played for me on Christmas Day.
She was very special. I mean, not only was she beautiful, she was really very attractive. And she wore hardly any makeup. She was tall, she was elegant, she was beautiful. And she had a brain as well, and she was fun. She was just everything you'd want in a friend.
As an obstetrician at a London hospital, Joan had specialized in bringing life into the world. but at the age of just 27, her own life was tragically cut short.
Oh, I think the hospital was stunned and shocked by Joan's death. Joan was one of a team of people, but the team was totally lost for a while without her. It could have been anybody, but Joan was special, and there was something about Joan that was different. Joan had talent, she had empathy, she had all sorts of aspects to her character which made her a very special doctor.
In the quiet, affluent London suburb of St John's Wood, Joan was strangled with the electric cord of her vacuum cleaner. Neighbours saw and heard nothing. The police had no apparent forensic evidence from the scene of the crime. But if the murderer's identity was a mystery to them, the family had their own suspicions. 6 years earlier, when Joan was 21, she'd ended a turbulent relationship with a man named Tony Deirdrick.
I think when I first met him, I thought he was okay. You know, he seemed like a likable chap. But when I got to know him in more depth, there were aspects of his personality that I did not like. I think Tony had a number of problems. He seemed to be extremely obsessive and had a very short temper, where he would just go off the handle. I was extremely concerned and very worried for Joan's safety. So I wrote to Joan, warning her about him. And in the letter, I tell Joan that Tony is a walking time bomb. And specifically, I say, it seems to me that Tony is a walking time bomb, and honey, your time is running out. So why shouldn't he hurt you? It seems to me that it is in his nature to do exactly that. I would say that Tony started to treat Joan very badly, and Joan wasn't willing to accept his treatment, so she decided to end the relationship.
In 1989, over 5 years before Joan's murder, Tony Deirdrick gave an indication of his violent nature.
After approximately 10 weeks of the relationship having ended, Joan found that Tony was stalking her at her mother's home. The stalking incident is actually quite violent and quite shocking. She discovered him lurking at the back of her house, on a roof, looking through the bathroom window. Joan and her friend went downstairs to see who it was because she hadn't seen his face. When they got to the living room, they were immediately confronted with the sight of Tony Deirdrick bursting through the patio doors. And Tony trying to get to them. They ran from the living room, frightened for their lives, up to a bedroom and barricaded themselves in. In that bedroom, Joan was able to telephone the police. Tony Deirdrick was outside the door, screaming at them, saying that he wanted to kill the man that Joan was with. He said, "Everything was building up inside of me and I lost control. The anger, frustration, jealousy. I wanted to see them and to catch them red-handed. I just wanted to get him." I find it extraordinary, given what Tony Deirdrick says in the interview that he had with the police, that nothing was done. They saw this as domestic violence. They saw this as something in which they wouldn't bother to interfere. They told Joan that she should try to get an injunction against Tony. What they had available to them was the criminal law. They knew that, and yet they failed to use it. I think that they let Joan Francisco down on that date.
Every day when I go out, people still telling me how sad to hear about Joan.
Yes, thanks.
Sympathizing with me.
Which of the two should I put, this one or that one?
And I'm very surprised to see how people have been so kind and sympathetic.
Not having dealt with a murder before, I was very frightened. I was very frightened indeed as to how I could deal with it. it seemed a gigantic thing to do compared to the kind of cases I'd been doing.
This was your first murder?
This was my first murder, yes. I'd had domestic violence, I'd had rape, I had some ugly things, but never a murder. All I could think of was applying the rules that we have for every other case. Listen, just listen. I was very much haunted by Venus's anguish and pain because I empathized.
Okay,
I had children. I had never seen anyone in such distress in my life.
Joan had told me that Tony had actually called my mother and had asked for Joan's address and telephone number, and of course my mother refused to give it to him. And I was really surprised, and so was Joan, that more than 7 years after they'd broken up, that Tony was actually pursuing Joan again. And we were quite surprised because there was no reasonable reason for this. So she had told me that he had called her at work, and Joan told him that she wasn't interested, that was a chapter in her life that's closed, and she'd moved on. And she'd basically put the phone down on him. But it seems that Tony was not willing to accept the fact that Joan didn't want him anymore.
He was a stalker?
He was a stalker, yes. Apparently, he had been listening to her telephone conversations. He had a device which he used to actually not only listen to her telephone conversations, but actually tape them. And there were times that Joan would tell me she felt that somebody was watching her.
He speaks to at least 5 of his friends, expressing to them his continuing obsession in relation to Joan Francisco. He describes to them the layout of her flat. He knows what colour car she drives, what type of car she drives. There's no doubt, as far as the friends are concerned, that he is stalking her, and clearly there's no doubt that he's obsessed with her. Practically speaking, the friends were sick to death of Tony Diedrich's obsession with Joan Francisco.
This obsession had become so overwhelming that he had bought specialist surveillance equipment designed for security and police operations.
Well, it is a quite extraordinary coincidence. We only had 6 of these devices in the entire United Kingdom. We only ever sold one, and we sold it to this man, Diedrich. And I've no idea why he wanted to use it, but as advertised, he would have realized that it had the potential to track somebody in the dark. It has 4 AA batteries in the handle here, and it has a vibration device inside it. In the front here, it has a window which detects body heat, and as you move it around, I can feel the edges of your body because it is vibrating in my hand. And as it recognizes your warm body against the cool background of this room, it will vibrate. So the person you are stalking will have no idea that he is being detected. A very good covert device.
I've seen this man who was looking around. He was really suspicious. And I called the police. They came around. I didn't see him. And a month later, I've seen, through my window, I've seen the same person I've seen before. And looking through my neighbor's window and everything. And I called the police again. And they came around as I couldn't find him. And 3 or 4 days later, I found out that actually she was murdered. And it turned out to be the same man that I've seen before. It's really shocking, yeah.
The nature of Tony Diedrich's continuing obsession is made out in a series of letters which he writes to her. He says this: "Joan, I can't understand why you refused to speak to me on the telephone. Did I really hurt you that much? I've just spoken to your mother on the phone. She tells me that you've become very frightened after I phoned you at the hospital. Please, please don't be frightened. I just phoned several hospitals and asked if you were on duty. I'm not trying to track you down. I just thought that you might speak to me if you heard me. They represent the feelings of someone who really just can't let go. But they're frightening because they also represent the words of a desperate man who then, in my view, goes on to kill.
When I learned that Joan had been strangled and the fact that she had been stalked, I told the police who I thought it was. And the person I thought it was Tony Deirdrick.
It's troubling that the police expressed that they believed that they knew who had committed this murder. They were 100% sure, and yet they didn't go and arrest that person. It's clear that they took the decision to sit back, to wait, to try to gather evidence, perhaps carefully, perhaps not. But in any event, there were missed opportunities, evidently.
Initially questioned by the police on 3 occasions, Tony Deirdrick maintained that he was at home at the time of the murder. However, family and friends remained convinced that he was Joan's killer. But the Crown Prosecution Service stated that they didn't have enough to arrest him.
What evidence we had was of a great deal of suspicion. We had the evidence of the stalking, his previous relationship, his admission, in effect, of stalking, his clear obsession with her, but there was no direct evidence that he had actually killed her or been there at the scene on the day.
There was a ceremony of the blessing of the stone, and there weren't that many of us there. It was extremely touching. It was like, for her, she was preparing a stage set. The flowers were placed in a very particular way, and she was very troubled about getting the stethoscope in. It was laid on the beautiful marble tombstone. She had told me earlier that when she saw young doctors with stethoscopes round their neck, that what anguish it caused her. So, to her, maybe she'd had a vision for a very long time of Joan in her white coat with the stethoscope. It was heartbreaking.
For if we believe that Jesus died and rose, so too will God, through Jesus, bring with him all those who have died in Christ.
The way that Joan went, or the way that Joan was murdered, it was so horrific, you know. You wonder what kind of monster could do something like that to somebody like that, you know, and knowing that this person is still at large. I just couldn't function properly. I thought, this isn't right. You know, Joan was brutally and violently murdered, and there's this man here just walking around, going about his daily business as though nothing has happened. We all know he did it, but yet nothing has been done about it. I just felt extremely angry.
It was a horrible feeling of, I'm letting Joan down. I've got to do something. I'm letting my mother down. I've got to do something. I can't stop here. And interestingly, a few months prior to this point, I had, by chance, seen the Lawrences on the news. They were challenging the system. And I remember saying, good for you. So I started making inquiries amongst my lawyer friends. Tell me about the Lawrences. What are they doing? And the more I learned, the more I thought, well, maybe this is the key here. Maybe this is the route we're supposed to be going. I thought, let me find out who's helping them, because maybe they can help us.
I and one of my colleagues, Imran Khan, had at that time been involved in the private prosecution on behalf of the family of Stephen Lawrence, who had also been murdered.
A private prosecution against 3 white youths for the murder of the black teenager Stephen Lawrence has collapsed at the Old Bailey. Stephen's parents brought the action after the Crown Prosecution Service dropped the original case.
The collapse of the Lawrences' private criminal prosecution meant that the suspects could never be tried for this crime again. So for the Franciscos, Karen Thatcher recommended bringing a civil action instead.
it was our view that there was an area of law which could be tested with this case, and that was to take civil proceedings, not in the criminal courts, but in the civil courts, to have a civil court decide whether or not Tony Diedrich was responsible for Joan's murder. The consequence of a court deciding that wouldn't be that Tony Diedrich would go to prison automatically, but what it would do is to firstly have a declaration by a judge, having heard all the evidence, that he was responsible. And it might change the minds of the CPS and the police in relation to the prosecution.
This decision to launch an action for damages against Tony Diedrich was the first time in legal history that a civil case had been brought against a murder suspect who hadn't been charged with the crime.
I have been praying all the time so that God will make that killer, well, reveal himself, that we would find out who really killed Joan. I've been praying for that all the time.
I chant because I am a Buddhist, and we believe in pulling out the most positive aspect of our life. We need to be able to successfully prepare ourselves to do battle with the world. Because of that spiritual preparation, I could confidently walk into the courtroom, think I'm going to be able to deal with this today, and it's not going to negatively affect me.
We start tonight with the story of a family making legal history. Dr. Joan Francisco, a 27-year-old gynecologist, was strangled in her flat on Boxing Day.
3 years after her murder on Boxing Day in 1994. And this is the man they claim was responsible. Former boyfriend Anthony Diedrich, accused by the family's lawyer today of harboring a violent and perverted obsession for her.
Chanting is my lifeline. It makes me feel that no matter what obstacles are facing me, I can overcome them. With regards to what actually lies ahead, I know that we have an extremely tough battle with the civil trial. But I feel that because I chant on a daily basis, I'm going to be okay with however the day goes.
Reliving Joan's death through evidence such as the police video of the murder scene was even more disturbing, with Tony Diedrich sitting beside the Franciscos in court.
It was very uncanny having him sitting that close and Venus just on my right. Left his place and went round and hunkered down to watch this video. And I think that would have been intolerable for Venus to have watched him do that and watched his face, as I did, as he saw that camera journey from the back door of Joan's flat to the bottom of the stairs and her lying there dead.
She must have called out for me. And I wasn't there to help her. There she was lying on the floor with that vacuum cleaner cord around her neck. Must be bleeding and crying out.
He looked as though he was just watching a television show. There was nothing showed on his face at all. If he hadn't done it, wouldn't he have been overcome with horror and grief? And it was extraordinary. He saw this girl that he was supposed to have been in love with and didn't want anyone else to have. And there was nothing on his face at all. I think that would have been appalling for Venus to see.
It is like a strange nightmare to me. Sometimes I think I would like to hear Joan's key in the front door calling out for me. But I miss that so much.
We've had to relive this whole tragedy. We've had to think again about what Joan went through those last few moments of her life. Having to watch my mother listen to that.
From time to time, visions of Joan's death flash before my eyes. At those times, I feel extremely angry, extremely sad, and what wells up inside of me is this renewed determination that no matter what, we have to ensure that justice is done.
Today is Judgment Day in the Civil Court, the family's crucial staging post in their campaign to put Tony Diedrich behind bars. If they win, the Franciscos hope that the CPS will review the case and prosecute Diedrich for murder.
If the judge decides against us, of course, I'm going to be absolutely devastated. Extremely disappointed. However, it doesn't end there. It can't end there. We have to pursue other options. Just because one door closes, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to stop at that point. Another one could open.
A judge has declared a man a murderer, even though he's never been charged with the crime. Dr. Joan Francisco's family brought a civil action against Tony Diedrich, who they believe strangled her in 1994, and today won damages from him.
Right, stop here, stop.
Congratulations.
It's been a very hard battle. I mean, it's been taken over 3 years since Joan's death to achieve this result, and the struggle has been tremendous. But it doesn't stop here. We are going to strongly urge the CPS to review this decision and to move forward with charges. I am so pleased when the judge said, I find for the plaintiff, it's like a number of feelings. Being relieved, yeah, the big one. Overwhelmed and disbelief. It's like, this is it, we've won.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. Hi. Thank you so much.
That's all right.
Everything.
Great. You feeling good?
Oh,
You feeling good?
feeling great.
All right, come sit yourself down. Come on, please stand. Come and join us. Joel's just copying the judgment so that we can all have it in black and white to look through at our leisure. The immediate impressions are that it's a very, very good judgment, where the judge has played it very sensibly. You see, this is where he goes through his headings. Killing motiveless by ordinary criteria, defendant obsessed, defendant regularly stalked, demonstrated explosive violence in the past, knew her habits, no alibi, repeatedly lied at the first interview. And he then echoes Mr. Justice Rougier's words. and I find the assault and battery alleged in effect the murder to have been proved. So those are very strong words, very, very strong words. It could scarcely be a better judgment, and it could scarcely be one which gives a better chance of a criminal prosecution. So you should feel very, very vindicated. You've gone through the fire and you've come out the other end.
The family have formed a charitable foundation in Joan's name to support black medical students. And the sisters record a song composed by Celia as a lasting tribute to Joan's memory.
What is it again? Splendoring, oh, splendoring. I wrote and composed Splendor because I wanted to encapsulate my memory of Joan. You know, I wanted a song that would really encourage people, move them to want to take action and change their lives.
You're determined to do something, then it will be done. Imagination. Sorry. If you're
Do you understand where you're coming in on that?
Yeah.
We'll try another one.
Okay. I wanted something that would inspire people the way Joan inspired me.
Fear nothing life presents you. You must remain unswayed. Believe in your power. Your glory will not be delayed.
The civil court victory placed the CPS under immense pressure to reconsider all the criminal evidence against Tony Diedrich. After an agonizing wait, today Margaret will hear their decision, which will, she hopes, finally result in Diedrich's arrest.
Because everybody's feeling impatient, nervous. Celia's got a headache. She's just waiting on tenterhooks. This is really a long wait, and I think it's very inconsiderate of them to keep us waiting this long. It's not necessary at all.
At the conclusion of the civil trial, I reviewed the case again. Firstly, to see whether or not there was any new evidence arising out of the civil trial, which there wasn't any. And secondly, to see whether the ruling of the High Court judge could help me in my decision making.
Hello?
Margaret?
Yes.
Hi, it's Karen. I've been told that the answer is that they will not prosecute. I'm sorry to tell you, but that's the decision that they've made. At this moment, I don't know what basis they've made that decision on because I haven't yet had the facts. And as I say, bad news, I'm afraid. And so we carry on, yeah.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Well, call me back. I'm going to call my mum.
If you would.
Hello. Hi. We've got a decision. Mum?
Huh?
They decided not to prosecute.
Oh, no. So you just got it?
I got it about 3 minutes ago. I was just trying to call.
I don't see how, within all reason, taking into consideration how the case unfolded, that they couldn't see that a jury would definitely find in our favour. I'm shocked. I am shocked.
I can well understand the reaction of the family to my decision. One sympathises with them and one can well understand their feelings. However, my job is to make decisions independently and objectively, and in this case there had been no change in the evidence and there was no change in the decision.
I mean, this is now not just a matter of making sure that Tony answers for this. This is a matter of challenging them, and they can't be allowed to get away with something like this. We will make a big noise about this, that's for sure.
This is David and Goliath.
That's a good analogy. David won.
It's emerged this evening, within the past few hours, that the man held responsible by a civil court for killing a London doctor won't now face criminal charges. Tonight, the family of Dr. Joan Francisco, who was murdered in 1994, say a killer isn't being brought to justice.
I'd taken the view that the way in which to push this case forward was to take it to the top. I contacted Paul Condon, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, his office, and arranged for him to meet with the family and myself and 2 other lawyers in the case, in order that we could discuss with him what the police were now going to do, given that the CPS had given up on the case, given that the police had previously given up on the case, given that we had been wholly successful in the civil proceedings, and yet nothing was to be done.
It is unusual for the Metropolitan Police Commissioner to agree to see a family involved in a specific murder case. Given the political climate, he may have felt he had no alternative.
I mean, this is a very high-profile case, and I think that it's obvious that race is being considered, especially in light of what's happening with the Lawrences. I think he's really trying to cover himself and at least be seen to be doing the right thing.
You start to wonder why, where there's a black victim, you know, the police or the system seems to break down. You know, why is that? You have to ask yourself that question.
Have you?
I have asked myself that question on a number of occasions, and you know, the only answer that makes any sense to me is a question of colour.
The Metropolitan Police Commissioner has met the family of a murder victim who've pursued the alleged killer through the civil courts.
We met with the Commissioner today to discuss our concerns about the lack of prosecution in this case. We are pleased that the Commissioner was able to meet with us, and he has reaffirmed the commitment of the Metropolitan Police to bring Joan's murderer to justice.
Sir Paul Condon assured the family that there would be a reinvestigation headed by a senior police officer into all the evidence against Tony Diedrich.
What they did was to go back and to look at not just documentation, which they clearly had at their disposal, but to take all of the forensic evidence back to the lab and to begin to systematically re-examine it.
Whilst waiting for the results of the police re-examination of evidence, the sisters put the final touches to Celia's song. With Joan's tribute song successfully recorded, Karen hears that the police re-investigation has uncovered new evidence.
Eventually, it became clear that there may have been a breakthrough. We were told that there was some blood found on a T-shirt which Joan had been wearing when she was murdered. We were told that the blood on the T-shirt wasn't Joan's, and that it was a man's DNA.
The former boyfriend of a doctor found strangled in northwest London has been charged with her murder. Anthony Diedrich from Maida Vale was arrested this week after new DNA evidence was discovered.
Forensics has always been very important to the police in this case, and they've always said that they didn't have it. In fact, we've now discovered, as has Mr. Diedrich, that they had forensics all the time, they just didn't know it.
The police declined to comment on this matter to us, beyond stating that they rely on advice provided by the Forensic Science Service. The FSS also refused to be interviewed, but in a written statement, they claimed that traces of blood on the T-shirt were insufficient to guarantee that a DNA profile could be obtained. We put this to an independent forensic scientist.
There's no scientific reason why the family should have had to wait 5 years to have taken that case to court. The DNA technology was available in 1995 to obtain a result from a pinhead-sized blood stain, and on that basis there's no reason why those tests should not have been carried out then. Had the tests been carried out, there would have been evidence on which Diedrich could have been arrested.
The FSS further stated that testing for DNA in 1995 could have destroyed the evidence, and they decided to wait for new, more advanced techniques, which they used later in 1998.
The DNA technology that was used in this particular case and presented to the court was available from the autumn of 1996, so there's no reason why the tests carried out in 1998 should not have been carried out 2 years earlier.
It's of course extremely galling for the family, for their lawyers, that the state has for so long sat back and said that they cannot do anything in this case because there is no forensic evidence. There's no fingerprints, there's no fibres, there's no blood. Whereas, in fact, sitting in a cupboard at Paddington Green Police Station probably was a T-shirt which did have blood on it, which did link the principal suspect to the murder, and which 4 years, 20 days on, they've been able to use to charge him with that murder. It's, to put it bluntly, a despicable state of affairs.
The mother of gynaecologist Joan Francisco arriving at West London Magistrates Court today to see her daughter's former boyfriend formally charged with her murder.
Joan's sisters have returned to America. After the court hearing, Venus phones Celia in Los Angeles.
Gosh, I can't believe it, Mum. It's actually happening.
Yes, it is. It is happening. Yes.
He is finally in custody.
That's right. And my prayers have been answered.
Yep, all of our prayers.
Yes, yes.
It's absolutely right to say that had they not gone back to this material, had the family not pushed for them to go back to this material, to look at it all once again, to carry out a thorough re-examination of it, then the evidence which they have now would never ever have been discovered. It would have lain somewhere, deteriorated over time, of course, and been lost forever.
A man has gone on trial at the Old Bailey, charged with the murder of a female doctor nearly 5 years ago.
It's taken nearly 5 years for this criminal trial to start. Today, the former boyfriend of the young gynaecologist accused of murder arrived at the Old Bailey, prepared to fight the case.
When she wasn't there anymore, there was just a great big hole in my life, really, because obviously the communication we had gone. The messages on the answer phone weren't there anymore. In fact, I had just recently bought a new answering machine after this unfortunate incident happened, and I searched high and low for the tapes from my old machine because I knew that... Sorry. Because her voice was still on them, you know, and as I'd run through one of them, I just kept hearing her voice, "Hi, it's me." I mean, it sounds ridiculous, someone would want to get rid of that, but I just had to keep hearing it. And I suppose really I hoped that perhaps she hadn't really gone.
For nearly 5 years, the Francisco family fought a determined campaign to win justice for Joan. On the 13th of October 1999, Tony Diedrich was found guilty of Joan Francisco's murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment.
When you're ready. Thank you.
Our efforts to ensure that Tony Diedrich did not get away with murder has paid off. And we know that Joan would be so proud of our commitment to fighting this through to the end and not giving up when others have. We have finally achieved justice for Joan. Thank you.
It hasn't sunk in that we actually won today, that we actually got the verdict that we've been waiting for 5 years. It just seems surreal. I can't believe it.
Francisco, to your right, please. Can you lean your heads into your mum, onto your mum? That's it. Celia, lean in.
I just cried and just the tension, the stress of these past 4 weeks, these past 5 years, just started coming out for a moment.
When I heard the verdict, it was one of the happiest days of my life. I know that Joan was around there with us. I know she was telling the 12 members of the jury that Tony is guilty.
This way, please. This way. This way.
I never imagined that a crime that I was called upon to deal with would have had such immense resonances for me and continue to have in my life. And I feel that they will always be present in my life, that family.
There's actually no other route we could have taken but to fight this. We are a family of fighters, all of us. There was no other way to go but to do what I believe is the right thing.
Losing Joan has turned my mother's world upside down, inside out. I see a sadness in her eyes, a sadness that wasn't there before Joan died. A sadness that I hope will someday be replaced by the happiness that I used to see.
Life will never be the same without Joan, never. Joan is irreplaceable. Although I have Margaret and Celia, who are very good daughters to me, but they are unique in their own way. Joan can never be replaced. She was a good daughter, also a good friend. I shall never forget her.